After I made this big move and started the business, I actually moved about every 6 months throughout my 20s in different countries throughout Europe. And that is a large part of the book. And the whole concept of the book is really about what it means to become yourself when you've been sort of set up for one life and that's not the life you want. There's nothing wrong with any of the different paths I could have taken, but I just had to choose the one that was the best for me.
Some experts chase attention, but the smart ones build authority. You're listening to the Authority on Demand podcast, where credibility becomes your competitive advantage. Every week, we're pulling back the curtain on how founders and leaders turn expertise into inbound demand through books that position, media that converse, and strategies that actually move the needle. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authority on Demand. Now, let's turn your authority into leverage. So here's a question for you. When's the last time you got excited about an email from a stranger? I mean, me neither. But according to today's guest, that's because we're all spam until we prove otherwise. And that might be the most important marketing insight you'll ever hear all year. Rachel Allen has spent 17 years proving she's not spam. She's the founder of Bolt from the Blue Copywriting, a marketing strategist who's worked with clients in over 21 countries. And she has a new book coming out too, which I'm so excited to learn more about. So, on today's episode, we're going to have a ton of fun talking marketing and writing and all things in between. Rachel, without further ado, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to chat.
Hey, real quick before we jump back in, if you're loving what we're doing here, hit that subscribe button and drop us a like. We're bringing you the best authors, the most real conversations, and all the writing wisdom that you didn't know you needed. So stick around because it only gets better from here. All right, now let's get back to the conversation. Yeah, I think this is going to be a great conversation. A lot of authors think that writing ends with, publication. But if you really want people to read your book and find out in the world, well, you have to continue breathing life into it and marketing, and that's exactly what
Right.
you're so good at and what you advocate for. So tell us a little bit about that. But, how did you get into the marketing world?
I fell completely backwards into it. I thought that I would always exist more in the book side of the world. I went to school for journalism and really wanted to be an author and just focus entirely on that. And then I graduated into the 2008 recession, and of course, nobody was hiring. So, in my 22-year-old brain, I was like, well, the move is obviously to find the furthest place away from Tennessee, which was Hong Kong. So I moved to Hong Kong, didn't bother to get a work visa or anything before I left, and I was Googling how to make money online, and this copywriting job popped up. So I took it and this little freelance gig, and then ended up really loving it and built a business out of it. And then ended up circling back around to more of my own writing and also work as an editor about 5-10 years after that.
Gotcha. Well, that must have been a crazy transition going to a whole nother country like that. Just personally, what was it like for you to make that jump?
It was really exciting. I really loved it, and it was a lot of culture shock because it is very different than anywhere else I had ever been. I grew up in extremely rural Appalachia, and Hong Kong is definitely not that.
Yeah, I can only imagine, but I guess the different perspectives only enhanced what you were doing there with the freelancing, right? Like perhaps just widening your mind a bit or getting you to, maybe feel more inspired for what you're doing. So that's
Yeah.
really awesome. Would you agree with that? Or was there a certain thing that kind of kept you going despite the big changes?
I mean, I think it was just so exciting at the time because it was so different, and I I had been in this very small community that had a very specific way of life, and I knew that I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. And so having something, even though it was uncomfortable in its own way of being so different, being able to be like, hey, but I am not living the same life as my parents and grandparents and everybody around me. I'm breaking the mold. That was just very inspirational for me.
Understood. Yeah, I get that. Kind of changing the trajectory, changing the path, doing something others, usually haven't. That must have been just really exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So would you say then, now that you're kind of transitioning into writing your own book, does that have any influence on it? Kind of like there are different, perspectives you got from all this traveling?
Oh yeah. I mean, so after I made this big move and started the business, I actually moved about every 6 months throughout my 20s in different countries throughout Europe. And that is a large part of the book. And the whole concept of the book is really about what it means to become yourself when you've been sort of set up for one life and that's not the life you want. And so I think having the opportunity to try all of these different ways of being and all these different ways of living was hugely influential. And that's what I try to show in the book as well, of like there's nothing wrong with any of the different paths I could have taken, but I just had to choose the one that was the best for me.
Understood. Yeah, and so I guess that's kind of something we can all learn from is you got to figure out what's best for you and where your dreams and interests take you.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about this book. What exactly sparked it, and did you have any challenges going along the journey of it?
So, the way I've described this book for a really long time, and the title is Batshit, by the way. So the way I've described
Oh,
Batshit
okay.
is, when you leave your shoes like in the middle of the floor, and every time you walk by and you kind of trip over them a little bit, and you're like, oh, I gotta move those shoes. Like that's what it's like in my brain.
Right.
And I've known I was gonna write this book for a really long time. And I've also had a lot of people tell me like, your life has been insane. You need to write a memoir. And I just didn't really know how I wanted to get into it. Because my deepest fear was that it would end up being just some sort of like trauma porn excitement like novel thing. And I'm like, no, I really want this to be very true to the experience of what it was in all its complexity. And so I finally was able to like bang out a first draft a couple years ago, and then I have worked with two developmental editors since to get it to the place where I'm like, okay, yeah, this feels like it's at the core of what's really at this story.
Understood. So you kind of had a team with you then. It wasn't, on your own. You had editors, you had, just I'm sure maybe marketers too, even though you are really good with marketing on your own. So was that like that collaboration? Did you like learn a bunch just by working with somebody for editing in general?
Oh yeah. And I'm so glad that I went about it that way because like I've played that role for other people. I've developmental edited I think 13 books now for other people, mostly business and nonfiction. And so switching into memoir, which I think is a more complicated genre to write in some ways because there's more of like an emotional complexity to it.
Right.
I realized that like after the first draft, I knew I had hit the like my level of competency with that craft. And so I found a developmental editor who had published a memoir who I really respected. And I said, hey, like I know that you can get what I'm trying to do here. And I know that it's wrong, but I don't know how to fix it yet. And then she was able to say, like, okay, this is like the technical elements of what's wrong with it. Here's like the craft stuff you need to work on. And then I was able to get another draft. And, same thing again. Each time I hit kind of the ceiling of my competency, I found somebody who I knew what they were doing, and they helped me figure out the next steps.
Understood. So that's awesome to know. I think a lot of authors can learn from that too. Having somebody who knows what to do and can guide you, it's just gonna, push your project on even more. So tell us a little bit more about this book. What is something that you're most excited about for people to learn from it?
I think the thing that I love so much about it, and the thing I'm most excited about, is that it's really a window into a really specialized community that I don't think most people would otherwise have access to. So, I was raised by Christian nationalists, and then I grew up to become very much not that. But in the process of that, it kind of broke my brain having
Mm.
to go from a world where it was like the world is exactly this way, and we believe these things, and you will live this way, and if you don't, that's wrong and God's mad at you. And always having this pervasive sense of like, I just can't make the world make sense, but everybody says this is how it is. So I guess maybe I'm crazy. And then gradually realizing as I moved more out of those spaces, like, oh, wait, this is not how most people think the world is. And I'm not crazy.
Right. Well, I'm glad, you came to that. I don't think you are either.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think a lot of people feel that same way too. So I'm sure they can really relate to that. And especially when they dive in, they'll be able to learn a little bit more. And when did you say this book was coming out again?
Next year.
Next year. Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess people can kind of follow along and, be up to date about when that comes out. Where would be the best place for people to, check out and get connected just so they can, be on the lookout for it?
Yeah, I have an author website, which is rachelcatherineallen.com. It's Catherine with a
Mhm.
C, and I publish updates on Substack that sort of feed through there as well. So you can read excerpts and see how the whole process is playing out.
Well, really cool. All right. So guys, we're going to put the link in the description box of this podcast today so you can, stay in the know and get connected and keep an eye out for Batshit. I think that's it's going to be a really exciting book and a lot of people can relate to it. But that being said, I'm wondering if you can transition a little bit into your marketing world. It's something
Yeah.
you've been doing for a while. So I mean, it's a huge topic, but you also mentioned when I was looking through your materials, 99% of marketing advice sets people up to fail. Why do you say that?
So, what I realized after doing this for quite some time is like for a sale to happen, you have to have four factors in place, which is you have to get the right thing in front of the right person at the right time in the right way. But the
Mm,
problem is you only have control over like one, maybe two of those factors. But most marketing advice is predicated on you controlling all four of them. And then it's like set up to where if it doesn't work, then they're like, well, it's your fault because you didn't want it badly enough, or you didn't focus enough, or you didn't do whatever, which is just not true. The only reason it fails is because you're not omnipotent. You can't control the flow of time. You don't know what's going to happen with these factors.
understood. Right. So, what do you recommend to somebody who knows they can't control it? What do you do?
So, what I recommend is like stack the deck in your favor as much with the factors that you can control. So, that's usually the thing and the person, right? Making the right thing for the right person. So, you want to make the very best, for instance, book you can. Make sure that it is as technically accomplished, as readable, as enjoyable. If you're going for mass market, as marketable, whatever it is, you want it to be the very, very best you can make it. And then you want to make sure that it is specifically designed for whoever you dream of putting it in their hands, you know? You don't want to just sort of make a great book or a great product or a great whatever and then scattershot it out to the universe. You want to make sure that you're creating something wonderful for someone specific. And the more you can do that, and then show up just consistently, the more likely it is that if they do happen to come across you talking about it, if they hear it, it's going to really resonate with them. So they'll start actually seeking you out instead of you having to just sort of broadcast at them continuously.
Okay, so just to kind of rephrase that, then I guess you're saying as long as you're taking like small steps, doing a little bit at a little time, it's going to eventually give you some results. Would you agree with that? Is that sort of
Yeah.
the
I mean, I think that's the buy-in, right? Like I think that's the very basic thing. And then if you bring some craftsmanship and some real interest in your work and some talent ideally on top of that, that's what makes it work.
Okay, yeah, no, understood. I think that's something a lot of people need to, keep in mind then. Some people might begin their marketing techniques and then fall off or think it's too
Mhm.
hard or do too much or too little. So definitely something to keep in mind. Um, what would you say then? What's one change that people can make to, with their marketing to make sure it has long lasting effects? I mean, keeping in mind that you can only do a little bit at a time and you have to have, as many factors in place. What's one thing they can change like today, for example?
The first thing I always tell people is do less. People are in so many places. If you are on a bunch of platforms, like choose one, maybe two that you absolutely love and that you would spend your time on anyway, and make that your place. If you are doing nothing, and you don't have less to do, then what I would say is, start with one thing that you love and that actually feels good to you. So I think most people are taught to do marketing in like a specific way, which is you have to be on Instagram and you have to be on LinkedIn and maybe you do a Substack or whatever. And it's like, okay, but how do you actually like talking to people? How do you talk to your friends? If you're an audio first person, do a podcast. Don't worry about doing these long email essays. If the thought of talking to people makes you recoil in horror, Substack is probably your place. You'll want to do like a longer, more in depth thought leadership type thing. So find the thing that feels good to you and really lean in on that. And as you said, do it consistently. And then that's where the results come from, as opposed to like following every new thing and trying to find a new process. It's just show up, build relationships, and it will work.
Understood. So it's kind of about those connections then, and like really like,
Mm.
nourishing and building those relations. Um,
Yeah.
Kind of riffing off that then, what they can do to ensure that they are building that relationship without coming across as like too much or, overwhelming. How do you do it authentically? It's something I'm
Yeah.
sure you've done in the past.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, my business has been, I think, 85% referrals throughout the last, what, 17 years.
Mm.
And that's the way that I'm building my audience for my book as well. And the secret is, it sounds really simple. You have to be willing to connect with people and have absolutely no idea how it's going to turn out.
Mm.
So, for instance, when I do these podcasts, I don't do them because I'm like, okay, if I do a podcast, I'm going to get 5 leads and that's going to work. And I'm like, I don't know. I might get leads, or I might just meet a really cool friend, or I might talk to a person who ends up talking to me 5 years later and needs something. Like, I don't know what my needs or wants are going to be in the future. And so it's just smart to get to know as many people as possible and to try and be as genuinely interested in them and as helpful as possible. Because then if something does come up, I know who I can talk to.
Right, and then you just kind of have to keep a record of all these people too. I feel like I might think back to like, wait, who can I ask? Who can I like out to? So I guess a
Yeah.
method of like, keeping them in like an address book or something like that online these days. You know what I mean? So amazing stuff. Um, so I'd love to transition a little bit into the writing tips as well, which, being that you're into marketing and you wrote your own book, I'm sure you've got a whole wealth of them. What's something you'd say that you struggle with the most in your writing? Like maybe some people have trouble writer's block, or others, endurance with writing. Anything like that come up as like a problem as you dove into this their upcoming book?
The thing, so what I sent my first draft to my editor and it was almost 60,000 words and it's a memoir, so it's about me. And she was like, I got to the end of this book and I feel like I know almost nothing about you. And I was like, what? And it turns out that I had included basically no interiority. It was just plot. And she's like, but I don't understand you. I don't understand why you're doing the things you're doing. And I had a little bit of a moment of like, my inner thoughts are none of your business, editor lady. But of course, like that's the whole point of a memoir, right? So I had to learn that. And then the other thing was descriptions. So I think a lot about people, but I don't like the way they look, their physical appearance just doesn't register with me very like it doesn't like stick in my brain, you know? So when I think later about you, I won't think like, "Oh, Danielle, she's got blonde hair and was wearing a black shirt." I'm like, "Oh, Danielle, we had a great conversation," you know?
Right,
So,
right.
having to go back and being like, "Wait, what did they look like?" I don't know, was really challenging for me.
Understood. Yeah, no, I get that. So kind of just like finding ways to remember people other than what the surface value of it is, and making that lasting
Mhm.
connection, kind of going directly into the connection part of it. It all works back together, whether it's writing or marketing or anything else you might need. It's important to just keep your eyes open because you're right. You never know those connections you might build.
Right. Exactly, and, like, what you might have to remember about someone later.
Exactly. Well, awesome stuff. Um, Another thing also is that your bio says that you are witty and provocative and you have a distinct voice. So, how intentional were you about using work and whether keeping it just like pure instructional?
So in the nonfiction, the little business sort of mini book that I wrote, I made sure that my voice came through because I wanted to feel like how people say they feel when they're in a workshop with me. So I love teaching workshops, and people give me the feedback that it's lots of fun, it's irreverent, it's not what they expected, it's not like death by PowerPoint. So I wanted it to feel like that because I know when you're looking at relatively long chunks of text, it can feel like, oh, okay, this is like a textbook. I have to like slog through it. So
Right.
I wanted it to feel very human. And then of course in the memoir, that was something where I had to kind of refine the voice because like my marketing voice isn't a fit for that. I'm not talking about my like innermost personal feelings in the same voice I would in a workshop or in my marketing world. So that took some time to kind of develop, but I think the wittiness and the sort of fast thinking and the little quiet observations, that's something I do across the board. So I did make sure to include that.
Right. So that's kind of cool then when you're thinking about like what kind of experiences to throw in there, you got to kind of have different things from all different areas of your life. Is that kind of what you're saying then to kind of pull from different aspects?
Yeah, and, like, it's all you, right? But, like, the way that you talk to, for instance, I don't know, like, your partner might be different than the way you talk to your family, might be different than the way you talk at work, like, the way I talk to my cat, I don't talk to anybody else like that, and so it's all me, but it's just very like, different, dialects or voices or, I don't know, like, approaches that I have to my own voice.
Okay, got it. And how do you like know when you're using like one voice over another? Do you like read it back, record yourself, or like how intentional is that then when you really think about it?
Well, I read it back for sure, and if I'm writing it and I feel, I can get this sense of discomfort of like, "Oh, I'm trying too hard here," then I know that something is wrong, or what I would find in the memoir is I would write something and then I'd be like, "Wait, that's not quite true. What am I uncomfortable about?" And then I would have to go back and be like, "Oh, you know what? Like, I was just embarrassed that this thing happened, but I wanna be truthful about it," so I would go back and change it, and I would make sure the voice reflected that.
Understood. So, okay, I get it. I got to think of like your message, what you're trying to get across, and that voice. So,
Mhm.
amazing stuff. All of this being said, then I know you have the book coming up next year, but what else is on the radar? What else can we be excited to learn more about?
Well, I've got that's the thing that I'm really sort of focused on, but I also have another book that I've started working on now that that one is complete and is making its way out into the world. So I do have a second memoir that I'm working on called Feral Wife that I'm pretty excited about, and it's about how the process of learning to be loved when that just doesn't make any sense to you, and you've never had a relationship like that before. And it's in the backdrop of my husband's incarceration. So it's sort of a like interesting concept of like love in impossible circumstances. So we've got that, and then in the business side of things, I'm still honestly thinking about what I'm going to do next year. But whatever it is, I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I like that kind of like an optimistic, mindset to it. But I love all these different projects you're taking on. I think it's something that people everywhere can benefit from, authors in particular, right? But clearly you're passionate about what you do too. And we did talk a little bit about your Hong Kong endeavors, but I feel like a lot of the work you've done is all in your other countries as well, right? Like 21 or more countries that you've been working with. Did you actually go to these countries, or you just consult people from those countries? Just to clarify.
About half and half.
Oh, happened. Okay.
So yeah, I moved every 6 months in my 20s, like throughout Europe. So I've lived in a bunch of different places, and then I've also worked with clients from all over the world.
Wow, that's really incredible. I mean, as somebody who gets to interview people on, via podcasts from people all over the world every day, I get what it's like to have different perspectives and have that influence your world and just, motivate you to, write new things and create new things. So I can only imagine how that's, played out into your own life.
Yeah.
Um, Really cool. As we interrupt today, then I'm wondering if you have any other bits of writing advice for the audience today, things that they might be able to implement in their own writing practice as soon as the podcast is over. What do you think?
So, this is such a simple thing, but I found that it makes a really big difference, especially if you find yourself having issues with editing or perfection. So, when I go into anything, when I like set up any project, I'll set up my working draft and then I'll set up what I call a parking lot for rabbits. And that's where anything lives, where I'm like, I have an idea, but I'm not sure if it goes into this draft or if I'm editing and I'm like, oh, I really need to have this paragraph, but it's really good and I don't want to. Then I move it into the parking lot for rabbits. So we don't have to go down the rabbit hole with it, but the rabbit doesn't disappear. It can like live in the parking lot. And I know that it's like going to be there when I come back to another piece. So really simple. And then the other extremely like technical hashtag pro tip that I do is if I ever get stuck when I'm starting to write something, I will literally just keyboard smash for the first couple like lines until I get a line that actually comes out in words. Something about it, like the movement of the fingers, helps get past that like terror of the blank page.
Okay, got it. Well, that's really cool. I love that parking lot idea. I've done that a couple times with my clients. Like if we have a concept, we write a chapter that we like, but we decide, we're not going to use it. Well, we don't throw it away. Keep it
Right.
handy because you never know when you'll need it. Have you found that useful in, moving forward? Like if, for example, in this book, pulling out ideas to put into your piece from that parking lot?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I had several even chapters that I was like, actually, you know what? I think that's an essay. I don't think it's a chapter. And so I would pull that, or like it might be one really good line that just doesn't fit. And then I'll pull it and use it. I mean, sometimes it'll move over into marketing. Sometimes I'll use it for a client's work. Sometimes I'll just move it into Feral Wife. It just sort of is finding the right space for the words to go.
Understood. Right. I get that. Kind of figuring out, not only the best space for it, but the best time to write about it too. Whereas something's going on, is it a good time to release a book on a certain topic, whether not now, and also what your passions are feeling. Am I excited about this now? Do I need to wait on it? So having that parking lot is a great way to just keep everything in check and keep it handy to go. So
Yeah.
well, this has been a really inspiring conversation. I think that everybody here has learned a ton about, marketing and about your book and writing tips in general. I think kind of went all over the place, but with lots of very useful pieces. So I'm sure people can definitely pull out at least one piece of advice to learn from today. Amazing stuff. Thanks for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Of course. And to everybody listening, again, we're going to put the links to Rachel Allen's work in the description box of this podcast today. So click on over, get in the know, be on the lookout for the book coming out next year where you can, get to learn all about Rachel's endeavors.
And until next time, please remember to keep writing, keep building, and keep proving you're not spam. We'll see you next time on the Authors on Mission podcast.
That's a wrap on another episode of the Authority on Demand podcast. If today's conversation sparked something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this episode with a founder or leader who's ready to stop being the best kept secret in their industry. If you want to turn your expertise into inbound demand, head to authorityondemand.com to see how we help clients go from unknown to in demand. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, and I'll catch you on the next one. Now, go build some authority.